Hello and welcome to the presentation called Provision of Scalable Secure Remote SUSE Desktops for Banking. Um, my name is Jean Zagonel and I work for Sendio Finlink, a company from Sweden. And now I talk to you from our headquarters here in Linköping, Sweden. So thanks for attending. About this presentation. It's a case study and the category Enterprise Linux, being a technical beginner level. And we classify this presentation as business applications in middleware, enterprise Linux, high availability solutions, Linux systems management, and virtualization technologies. I want to say thanks to Farhad Ahmed from NDS Technologies in Pakistan for your collaboration, helping us to have the material and all the content for this presentation. Let's jump to our agenda for today. Here we have, it's basically, this presentation is divided in three parts, being the first part, the case introduction, which we are going to talk after this slide. The second part is solving the problem, where we discuss how the problem introduced in the case introduction was solved. And third and last, it's the take-home message. So the idea is that you are able to recap what we discussed during the presentation. So let's start presenting. Everything here starts with a question. Maybe when you signed up for this session, you had this question in your mind. So, how a bank provided scalable and secure remote Linux desktops across a country? So, to answer that question, we need to understand a little bit more about the case details. We are talking about a bank institution in Pakistan. This bank has more than 4,000 employees, and the 4,000 employees, they are spread among more than 300 branches across the country. So, as you see, geographically spread. This bank had a growth strategy. They work as a full commercial bank, and they had the idea to expand their operations in the country with an ambitious plan. Their IT team in the bank, it's a small team and also highly optimized. It's normally the reality in most of banks, I believe. This small IT team, they were focusing on cost reduction, but also on providing a better user experience. So this is a dilemma. How can you reduce costs, save money, and also provide good applications and good IT services for the user? So this was their focus. Another important concern for this small and optimized IT team is that they deal directly with highly sensitive data. As we see, it's a bank, so we are talking about money, and it's subject to several risks of attacks and so on, this kind of IT systems. Another important aspect here that this team had to deal with is that access to IT system is vital in a bank. Taking it shorter, the bank basically doesn't operate without IT systems. So this puts a little bit more of challenge to the team. Well, but the bank had an IT system that was working that time. However, the technology that the bank was using had a discontinuation announcement. So it means that if the bank continued with the existing solution, they would not be able to fulfill the growth strategy needs. And well, with this scenario in mind, I want to invite you to start the second part of this presentation. So, and this part, in this part, we explain how those problems, how they were solved. So we will connect the business problem presented before with the technical solution, with the IT solution for that specific problem. The bank team, they joined efforts with the company NDS Technologies in Pakistan. And together, both teams, they started looking for alternatives that would solve the problems. And when trying to find the right alternative, some questions should be answered or should be solved. And so they came up with 5 questions. The first question: how to solve the problem of providing IT applications to more than 300 branches and 4,000 employees geographically spread? The answer to that question was remote desktop. Okay, it should be a remote desktop system to provide access to all these branches and employees geographically spread. A second question: how to solve the problem of intense operational growth? And one keyword that summarize how this problem should be solved is a system that is scalable. The third question: how to solve the problem of keeping a small and centralized IT team and distributing diverse applications to thousands of users? This question had the keywords easy to manage and use as a solution. Fourth question: how to solve the problem of dealing with highly sensitive data subject to various risks of attacks? The answer to that specific question is like a secure system. And how to solve the problem of an operation that need to be available 100% of the time. You remember we talked a little bit before about that the banks can't operate with an IT system. So the answer for that is like a reliable IT system. With these questions in mind, a final question is joining all together. Which solution would give the bank a remote desktop system that is scalable, easy to manage and use, reliable, and secure? We move on to the next slide and we talk about what was the solution found. So Both teams agreed on implementing a ThingLink SUSE Linux remote desktop system. So it's the combination of ThingLink, which is a Linux remote desktop server, and SUSE Linux distribution. Maybe you wonder now why ThingLink and SUSE? And we argue that both are 100% Linux and both love open source. They are mature enterprise Linux products inspired and based on open source, which gives freedom and adaptability, regularly developed and tested, bringing reliability and security. They are refined and supported for best manageability and user experience. They give a good value for money and no vendor lock-in. And no vendor lock-in, it was one of the important factors that the bank evaluated when taking the decision. They would like to have this freedom about not being locked in. Maybe you wanna learn more. Okay, how does this ThingLink plus SUSE installation look like? And now, as you see in the screen, I will explain it step by step. We start by uh, two halves of a circle, and one side is the client on the top, and the other one the server. Here we explain what happens in the client side. So the bank had HP Fin clients, and they had smart cards for authentication. So the ThingLink native client was installed in this Fin client, giving the access to the users through the smart card authentication. All the communication between the ThingLink client and the server is through SSH, so making that secure for the bank data. On the other side, in the ThingLink server, we had obviously the ThingLink server installed in a setup of one master and 12 agents. Later on, we will cover details about how this works with master and agents. And this server had SUSE Enterprise Server and SUSE desktops, providing the users mainly Firefox, web applications, core banking, and LibreOffice. So this image summarizes the installation at the bank. Now we go back to the keywords as mentioned before. And specifically, we are going to talk about the keyword scalable. So why is this system scalable? Both ThingLink and SUSE are enterprise products, and they are made for large installations. They work smoothly with large installations. In the case of ThingLink, it's easy to scale because of load balancing, multi-server deployment, clusters, and subclusters as well. Basically, in a ThingLink installation, in the servers, they are divided in a master or masters and agent or agents. So the master handles the login authentication of the users and also distribute the sessions among the agents. So this has to do as well with the load balancing. The agents, they basically run the sessions and keep them available. And when I say keep them available, it's because the users can disconnect from a session in one place, for example, and continue the session in another device or on the same device later. And the user get the session as when the user left it. It's used a lot. When thinking about scaling a ThingLink SUSE setup, it's about increasing the number of user licenses for ThingLink that I can explain better. It's just adding new licenses. And also, it needs to scale the hardware. So, in case the hardware needs, in case it's required more capacity from hardware, it's about adding more master servers or agents, for instance. Okay, now let's talk about why it's easy to manage and use. That is the next keyword. Now we'll focus on the part easy to manage. Why is it easy to manage? It works with any system and device, bringing flexibility and freedom of choice. ThingLink integrates with existing infrastructure on the server side and works with a wide range of Linux distributions. Concerning the server, it works with the following architectures: x86 64, AMD 64, and i686. And concerning the software in the server, it works for any Linux distro and desktop as well. In the case of the bank, the choice was SUSE, as mentioned. So another important aspect is that ThingLink is easy to set up new users. It's really fast for the sysadmin to put a new user in the system. And it allows bring your own device. So maybe using employees' devices or new devices recently bought. It's really fast to integrate in the system. It's basically about downloading the ThingLink client and putting the server name, login and password, and start running. It works with any OS, anywhere, anytime. And why any OS? The native client, as mentioned here, ThingLink has native clients for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, and they are available at the website for free to download easily. And also, it's possible to access a Linux remote desktop through ThingLink by the web access with any popular browser. It has also enterprise level support in the case of ThingLink and SUSE as well. ThingLink also allow its easy or automated installation, upgrade, and configuration using scripts, Ansible, Puppet, Docker, and other. And ThingLink has an admin interface through either web graphical user interface that's very user friendly, and also the command prompt. Next, let's talk about why it's easy to use. This combination of ThingLink with the SUSE Linux distribution, it provides a feature rich for a local user experience. Here, focusing more on ThingLink. ThingLink session allows sound and microphone. It also has access to local drives, and this means from a remote session, as a user, I'm able to access my local files in the computer. It's really useful. It has local printing. So if we think in the example of the bank, it's important perhaps to keep the information secure in the server, but maybe it needs to print in the bank branches some reports or any sort of papers, and that is possible through ThingLink to print it locally. It has also support for multi-monitor and have the dynamic resize function, single sign-on, hot desking. What I briefly described before, it's possible to disconnect from a session on ThingLink and reconnect to that session later, either from the same device or in another device. And in the case of the bank, we have information that some employees access a session on one branch and then they move to another branch and they basically put their smart card and get back the session in the same way as they left in the other branch. So this is a positive aspect that they refer. There is ThingLink user profiles as well, clipboard synchronization, so copy and paste from the local machine to the remote session. Also, ThingLink has touch gestures functionality, which works also for non-touch apps inside ThingLink session, and session shadowing that is about two persons sharing the same session. Why is also easy to use? It's because the client software, the ThingLink client software, is available for common operational systems, Linux, Windows, Mac OS, and browser. So as a user, if I, for instance, have a new machine, I can just download the client directly from Sandy website and start running, connecting to the remote session easily. And also it gives optimal performance and giving the feeling of a local machine. And this is possible through the use of the protocols that make ThingLink, like Tiger VNC, No VNC, and Pulse Audio. Keyword we are going to talk about is secure. And well, we know that Linux and open source are secure by nature. So ThingLink is based on open standards built from auditable open source code. And here it's important to make a distinction as SUSE is totally open source and ThingLink is almost 80% open source. It's centralized setup, so there is no data transfer. The data is always stored and never leave the data center. It's typical for server-based computing. Support for multiple authentication mechanisms. In the case of ThingLink, one-time passwords, public key, Kerberos, smart card, and here I highlight smart card because this was the choice for the bank case that we're talking about. The traffic also between the server and the client is always encrypted, being SSH or TLS, and SSH in the case of the native client, and TLS when using the web browser, the web access. So also it's important to mention the customizable data flow in the user session. It means that the clipboard synchronization and local drives can be customized by the system administrator, like to avoid taking information from the remote session to the local machine or the opposite as well. And the last keyword we talk about is about it's reliable. So why is it reliable? Well, both are inspired and based on open source modules for maximal robustness and adoptions. They are both SUSE and ThingLink mature enterprise Linux products, regularly developed, tested, and supported, being developed for almost 20 years, both products. There is in ThingLink inbuilt height availability and load balancing, bringing redundancy and fault tolerance. So this is also a feature that a lot of customers make use of. And also there is top enterprise support from professional Linux engineers. From Sandy ThingLink, for instance, you get direct support from the developers that are working with the product daily. This image shows what we are talking about today. So through the combination of ThingLink and SUSE, we had satisfied customers there in Pakistan running their bank operations smoothly. I want to also share with you two quotes that we got from them. And the first one, as you read in the screen, the ability to easily deploy software and manage machines remotely was a major factor in the bank's choice of solution. And the second quote say, the SUSE and ThingLink implementation has given confidence that data transmission can operate flawlessly round the clock. As a take-home message now, finalizing, the idea is to bring all together what we discussed during the presentation. So how the bank solved the problem of being geographically spread through the ThingLink SUSE Linux remote desktop. How did the bank solve the problem of intense operational growth? So with an IT system that should be scalable. How could the bank save money and keep a small IT team taking care of more than 4,000 users? It should be easy to manage and use. And how to deal with sensitive data. The response for that it was secure IT system. And how to solve the problem of highly dependency of the IT systems, that the bank only operate with IT systems. It was to have a reliable IT system. So taking all together, ThingLink SUSE Linux Remote Desktop bring to the bank a scalable, easy to manage and use, secure, and reliable IT systems. That's the message for today's presentation. You are welcome to contact me or my colleagues to discuss further. I really hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you very much for attending. As we say in Sweden, hej då! See you! Bye bye!